How's it going, YouTube? Welcome back to the Lab TCG. Today, I am bringing you a topic that was highly requested based off some information I gave in the last video about speculating and investing in not only sealed products, but singles as well. And today, we are jumping into the topic of utilizing the competitive side of the Pokemon TCG for your Pokemon business. Joining me today is the one and only Rahul Reddy, also known as the Flea 18. Rahul is quite an insane Pokemon player and individual. Been friends for a long time. We've traveled the world together, quite literally playing Pokemon. So Rahul, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us about your experience in the Pokemon TCG, how long you've been playing, all your accomplishments besides winning a regionals, and all that.
Will, thanks for having me as always. Yeah, like Will said, we have traveled the world together playing Pokemon. It's been an amazing experience. I've been playing for 11 years now, and I've pretty much accomplished high placements at every stage of every competition, including the World Championships. I just haven't won a regionals yet, which is like Will mentioned, and yeah, I'm excited to be here. Should be fun.
Great. And Rahul is completely downplaying how good he is at the game. Like, before the pandemic, we would test for events, and testing essentially is just the practice of playing decks over and over and over again until you find the deck that you want to play for the event. And Rahul would always come up with these wild ideas, which probably leads into why he's so good at what we're talking about today. And essentially, you just play these decks and you win tournaments. Now, I know that a lot of the people that watch this channel and other business channels don't exactly have the knowledge of the Pokemon TCG competitive side, and that's kind of what we're going to do here today, is bridge the gap between the competitive side, the collecting side, and the more business focused. So the reason I brought Rahul on, not only because we're great friends and we've traveled a ton, but Rahul has historically been very good at predicting card values that are going to increase. There's been a few cards over the years that he's told me about that have increased, whether that's a common, uncommon, a secret rare, or anything. Rahul is generally speaking very good at reading card text, which is a big component of what we're going to be talking about today, and being like, yeah, this card is going to be competitively viable in the future. So, with that being said, Rahul, in general,
hmm
and go ahead and talk about the background of the TCG, more so like why cards are good, maybe draw effects or anything like that. What makes a card worth speculating on, and what is something that you look for when you're investing in cards?
So generally speaking, we know that most commons, uncommons end up becoming bulk, and that's like they go 3, 4 cents, whatever, right? But finding those like rare finds, like a drizzle, for example, or capture energy, which are some of the more recent like booms that have become like $3, $4 cards, can go a long way. Especially like even if a 3 cent card becomes like a 20 cent card, that's a pretty significant profit in what you're making. So when you're looking at some of these cards, what I always tend to do is pull out trainers, supporters, and like energy to start because I feel like that's a separate category by themselves. Usually those can be slotted into a lot of decks. There are niche use cases for a lot of them. So if you can find one that you think, okay, maybe down the line this card just needs a certain partner. Like maybe this card has like the text it works with is perfect. It's just certainly right now there's nothing that works with it. Maybe give it a set or two and it's good. If not, you just throw it back into the bulk. It's not a big deal. Just pull it aside and hold it to, for future use. And there are certain cards that are naturally good. Like for example, Capture Energy, I thought was going to be a card that was going to be good from the moment I saw it because it lets you grab a Pokemon from your deck on attachment and put it onto your bench. One that serves the purpose of setting up your board, which is really, really crucial in the Pokemon TCG, and it serves as your energy attachment for the turn. And at the current time, there was no Pokemon that could, you couldn't accelerate too much energy onto the board. So getting that one energy attachment for the turn and getting a Pokemon was so pivotal because you're doing two things with one card effect. And something like that where you're doing two things with one card effect can be good in the future. It's just you have to figure out what time that would be. So pulling those kinds of cards aside is always crucial. Now, when it comes to like Pokemon that are commons or uncommons, it's a little bit harder to tell. I will think sometimes a card's going to be good, and it's usually just not. But there are some like very very like niche commons and uncommons where it's like if I play this card, I could win a certain matchup. And in the use case where it actually turns up and pops off, then players will start buying it in mass. For example, this past weekend, there was the Full Grip Games 1K tournament, or 2K tournament that happened, and Flygon V made its appearance in an RCS V Star deck, and it popped off really well. The deck was really great. It was a really under the radar deck that nobody really saw coming. And Flygon V, which is like a dollar bulk V Pokemon, uh, I was looking at TCG Player, it was getting bought out en masse. And like that's the kind of thing that happens if you are on the forefront of these kinds of things.
Absolutely. And I know for the people that are probably watching, we still have a bunch of people here at the 5 minute mark. A lot of the ways that we're saying things are going to be ways that are unfamiliar to the average person that has no idea what's going on with the competitive side. I'd recommend a good way to more learn about this is to start watching some of the competitive YouTubers that are in the space. Rahul makes content on his own channel under Rahul Reddy and the Flea on whatever social medias you choose. There's also Azul GG. There's Tricky Jim. There's tons of YouTube channels out there if you look up competitive Pokemon TCG or playing Pokemon trading card game online, and you will learn a lot of this stuff. And a lot of the times, the main reason why things become playable is simply the text on the card. So if you don't know the interactions of cards, there would be no way for you to speculate on that card. And that's kind of one of the reasons why when I've talked about this in previous videos, it's more of, especially bulk cards, there's no point in getting rid of your trainers and energies, whatever the card may be, for 3 cents, when the possibility that card turns into, like Rahul said, 20 cents, 50 cents, $1. Your cost on holding that card is 3 cents. And worst case scenario, you're wrong. And if you have a bulk lots method that we've discussed on the channel, you turn it into 6 cents or something like that. So with the bulk card specifically, it's very easy to just accumulate, and eventually, when you're researching on TCG Player or eBay or whatever pricing model you use, you go, oh, this Cramomatic card that I've been holding on to is now 89 cents. I have a ton of those because all I've done is hold on to all the trainers. So that's kind of a really good way to not get super invested in the card game itself, but also know how to speculate on certain cards. And it's more so just the more shots you take, the more likely you are to hit them. So if you just spread your risk across a bunch of bulk trainers, energy, whatever, not really the Pokemon, but you could also do that too. You spread your risk, it's bound to happen that something becomes playable at some point.
Yeah. One thing I will say though is, like Will said, you don't have to watch all competitive content creators' content in general, because I know a lot of that stuff is confusing and a little bit out of your guys' depth range. One video that I would always look out for when competitive content creators do is buy list videos. If competitive content creators are making buy list videos, they have a very clear idea of what cards they believe personally are going to be good from a certain set. And sure, some of them might be misses, but keep a close eye on what the number of counts they're doing. So in the Pokemon TCG, you can play 4 copies of a card in your deck other than basic energy at most. So look at the counts they're saying, look at what cards they're mentioning, because that'll go a long way in determining where's their head at, and that will usually lead into the community, which will then buy these cards off of you guys en masse. Like for example, if for Brilliant Stars, I'm telling people to buy like a 4/3 RCS Vmax line, which means that both your RCS V Star and RCS V are both going to be very popular and very hot. So there's no reason to go like below like market price at any point. But for example, if someone says like, oh, you should only buy one Whimsicott V, you're probably sitting there going, maybe Whimsicott's just not the card that's gonna, make me $1 million here today.
In addition to that, and it's a very good point that Rahul brought up, cards like RCS V Star or Arceus, if you as a seller have, call it 8 copies of Arceus V, it makes sense to list your set of 4 higher than a single. So on TCG Player, you guys know that it starts with the lowest price and then that seller's quantity. So if the first 4 listings are all 1 copy of Arceus V, they're going to be undercutting every other listing because they want their card to sell first. However, on TCG Player, there's a lot of competitive players. If that competitive player watched Rahul's video and wants to go find Arceus V-Stars in sets of 4, they will go to the listing that has a quantity of 4, even if it's on the second page or the third page. So if I don't know if this is right, but if your Arceus V-Star is selling for $5 by itself, if you have 4, you could charge $7 a card and beat all the other singleton listings, and that competitive player that wants 4 now just paid $28 instead of buying $5 on each seller. So you actually made $2 more per card than if you had just matched the lowest listing on all those other cards.
Yep.
So there's a lot of stuff there. LimitlessTCG.com is also a great way to look at deck lists that are doing well, and I believe Limitless has price boxes on all of the cards. So if you go on there and you search by, well, actually you don't even need to search. You go to limitlesstcg.com, tournaments, and then you could literally look at the first couple deck lists that are associated with player names, and you can see, okay, this person played 4 RCS V Star, 4 RCS V, 3 RCS V Star, and it'll tell you the price right there. The same thing goes for commons and uncommons. So they played 4 Ultra Balls, price of Ultra Ball. They played 3, I don't know, whatever. The price is there. So you can use Limitless TCG, and I believe the other link is play.limitlesstcg for some of the online tournaments that have been going on, because I don't think Limitless TCG has been updated in quite a while.
Yeah, it will soon because in-person play is coming back. That's why this video is so crucial, because with in-person play coming back, you will see an influx of competitive players trying to buy back into the game. Because in the last 2 years, a lot of players haven't had a reason to really buy sets and keep up with sets. And the collectors have been flooding the market, which has been fantastic for competitive players like myself. Because I'm usually going to buy well, most people will usually buy minimum rarity. I'm an exception to the rule, but most people will buy minimum rarity. And like with how many packs are being opened, how many cards are being flooded, you need to know the best value for, you shouldn't be selling your like Dragapult for like $2 when it could be a $2.50 card, or like I don't know, uh, something else. Like let's do the Whimsicott example. Like it could be $1, but most people are listing it, but you could probably get $1.50 out of it if you're not competing too hard.
Mm-hmm. And not financial advice for all the people here, but I would anticipate that with the return of the Pokemon TCG, we're going to start seeing individual card prices across the board
Yep.
increase because there's now an actual reason besides collecting to purchase these cards. So you have collecting that's super hot and you have that up here, and play is kind of over here. When play returns, you're going to start seeing that creep up, and some of these more like singleton cards, Arceus for example, it's already a popular Pokemon, highly collectible, and all of a sudden the card is extremely good in the card game, so now you see that price increase. I think I would anticipate that a lot of the trainers, and this is why I've been telling you guys to start stockpiling trainers,
Yep.
trainers are probably going to start increasing across the board because people are going to start playing with these decks and performing well. And what happens with that happens? New players want to copy the best players, so they start buying all those cards as well. You also have businesses, and I haven't done this personally, but you have businesses that see the tournament results and go,
Yep.
okay, I anticipate that this next card, Flygon V, for example, if you have that understanding of the game, and you go, all right, I know this Flygon V card is going to be good. My cost basis is bulk, 75 cents, $1 for that V. Buy out all the Flygon Vs, and then you see it does well. Okay, dump them back onto the market, buy out all the other
Yep.
listings, and then charge $5 a card. So that's why
Yeah.
sometimes on TCG Player you have listings with 3 sellers that are charging 10 times the price of what it was last week because people are buying out that card that just did
Mhm.
well at an event.
Yeah, one thing I will say, like that Will mentioned at an event, there are some big name like stores that show up, like your collector's cash, your Troll and Toad. Some of the bigger YouTubers you guys have been watching, Danny Phantom, like those guys will be there, and they will come to people like me and say, "Hey, Rahul, what's the sauce? Like, what am I looking for on the Saturday? Like on Saturday, as soon as we're like 2 hours into the tournament, a lot of players will kind of know what's doing well, what's like a little bit of a spicier card that we might not have expected. And the vendors will want to know immediately on that Saturday so they can start buying it out as quickly as possible. So by the end of the weekend, they have the first jump on information. And they're very reputable people that come to me. So you guys know at least you're coming to a nice source.
Right. In addition to that, it presents arbitrage opportunities. Today in the community Discord, if you're not in there, the link's going to be in the description. I mentioned that Muscle Band is now a $5 uncommon from XY base set. I didn't even know this. I just was looking and I found it. But there are still people on eBay that are selling Muscle Band for $1, $2, or whatever. And I was able to go on there and buy out all these muscle bands that are underpriced, and now when they get to me, I'm going to sell them for $5, $6, $7, $8. So if you're ahead of the curve or you see that coming, you can also make that move. Maybe go to some of your smaller card shops that don't follow the competitive game, and say you come to a card store that has 20 copies of muscle band that they don't know it's worth $5 now. They're probably going to ask for bulk because it's a common uncommon. You pay 25 cents a card. Well, you now have $100 in muscle bands that you paid $5 for. So there's a lot of ways to pay attention to competitive results and kind of go from there. So Rahul,
Exactly.
when we kind of touched on this a little bit with the card text, but when you're speculating on singles, what are some of the best things that you like to look for?
I like to look for like versatility is one of probably the biggest thing. If a card looks like it could be splashed into multiple decks, I think it would be very, very strong. And then there's like very niche use cases where you have to like look at let's say, for example, Dunsparce is like one of those cards that I was speculating on that I thought was going to be pretty good. I don't think it's going to be, but like when I was looking at Dunsparce, I said, well, I know that there's probably going to be a colorless type attacker coming up soon that's going to be very, very strong. And we did get that in the form of Arceus V-Star. So there's a combo potential there, or like where a certain card may be waiting on just one other piece or one other card to be really good, which is where coming like paying attention to like card leaks, I guess, and like what's coming out in Japan makes a lot more sense because the moment something's announced in Japan, you know it's going to come here at some point or another, whether it be a promo, whether it be a blister, like whether it just be in our general set, you know it's going to be here. So you can kind of anticipate ahead of time, like, okay, like a Dark Patch, for example. As soon as they announced Darkrai, I was like, Dark Patch value is going to go back up, even though it's an expanded card, and it should not be viable currently in the standard format. but dark patch, that means that dark patch is probably coming back, or there's going to be a dark type attacker that's going to be really good. And lo and behold, a day later, dark patch was announced. So if you were someone who made that call within that 24 hours and bought out a bunch of dark patches, you're probably sitting pretty right now.
Right. In addition to that, as Rahul was mentioning, there are tons of cards to be announced, and there's tons of cards that already exist. So when you're looking at these competitive the synergy there, it's completely possible that a random bulk card instantly becomes a way more playable because they release something down the line that you didn't know was going to happen. So again, kind of wrapping into that, just conserve, like hold on to stuff, because maybe not in Brilliant Stars, but in Astral Radiance, the next set, we could have a card that all of a sudden makes Potion the greatest trainer ever created. Do I think that's going to happen? Probably not, but you get the point. Stuff could happen down the line that makes other cards that didn't seem good at first become really good. So, and going into the next question, Rahul, how do you distinguish the trainers that you sell once you've bought them and you actually hit right? Is there a profit percentage that you like to hit? 2x, 1x, or sorry, not 1x, but 50% margin, maybe 100%. Is there something that you're looking for, or is it, do you just hold on to them because you like playing? What do you do when you actually hit on something that you're speculating on?
Obviously, I think some stuff. I like to keep a playset for myself. Maybe a second playset if it's like I'm too lazy to proxy, or I need multiple decks at the same time. Besides that, like as soon as there's like some decent amount of profit margin, like probably like 50-60%, I'll probably start getting rid of them. Just because some of these commons, uncommons that are trainers, you can get them in like mass. So for example, I got rid of my extra drizzles as soon as they hit that like $4 mark, or like I mean that all shot up all at once, and I'm sure it went up past that. I don't know the exact metrics to back that up, but I'm sure it went up past that. I'm sure capture energies went up past where they were. But for me, it's like, well, okay, they're at this point. I don't want to have to worry about it. I'm just going to throw them up there. But if you're someone who's more patient, it is worth kind of like speculating, looking, saying like, hey, maybe it'll go higher. But that's like all like a risk, right? Like it's all a risk. The moment things start going up, it's like, where do you think? I think this is enough money in case it crashes. Like in case it goes past this and like it goes back down or something and people start flooding the market again. I just want to make sure that I don't lose too much money off of this potential profit. Because at the end of the day, a profit's a profit. It's just how much profit can you make.
Right, and that that entire little question and your response can go into something that is far beyond the scope of this video when it comes to risk management and financial assets and all that stuff. Very complicated topic, but generally speaking, to me, I like to sell bulk cards at 50 cents. So if we're talking, let's just round it to 60. If we're talking a cost basis of 3 cents, that's a 20x return before fees and shipping on said single. $1 is also another attractive price target. $5 is like very expensive, but depending on your cost basis, you're talking thousands of percentage of return. So
Yeah.
if you have 100 copies of a 3-cent card and it goes to 60 cents, that's a lot of money that you can made. And like Rahul said, it's kind of just wherever you want to go ahead and take profit. Now, before we go ahead and jump into some of the viewer questions that we got from the Discord, I do want to go over how I actively monitor cards that are hot and, some of the cards that I'm holding, what becomes good. If you go on TCG Player and you go to the top bar and you just hit enter, it's going to give you this large selection of stuff. You can then hit the search functions that are on the side. You have all these filters. I like to search by the sets that are in the standard format. Right now, as at the time of this video, it is Sword and Shield base set to Brilliant Stars. I like to hit all those boxes and then sort by uncommons and commons and then best selling. And best selling is going to show you the highest velocity. You could also sort by highest price, so you can see the highest priced commons and uncommons, and you can change those filters to whatever you want. So if you want to hit expanded, now you're going black and white all the way to Brilliant Stars, and then you can sort it that way. And the reason that you want to sort it is because if you just do common, uncommon, and then sort by price, you're going to get a bunch of like WotC cards, EX era cards, stuff that is super unlikely that you're going to find in bulk cards. And in addition to that, those cards are not legal for competitive play. So when we're talking specifically about the competitive play, I like to use those search functions on the side of TCG Player, and you can apply that to anything. Ultra rares, you can search bulk ultra rares that are now worth more than $1, and there's a bunch of advanced functions that you can use to search. I'll go ahead and maybe make a video later on how to do that, but that's the general premise. Is you go to the TCG Player box, you just hit enter or find the advanced search function and just go ahead and sort the cards by trainer, best selling, highest, lowest, and you can kind of find out there. Another good way, something we've talked about, is if you go like ultra rare sort by lowest, you can just buy out a bunch of bulk ultra rares for 30 cents, 70 cents, whatever the lowest listing is that's on TCG Player. So that's how you would go ahead and monitor that. So I do that at least once a week just to see if there's any cards that have kind of shot up in price from when I've held on to them. And it's a good way, and that's kind of how I set the alerts in the Discord, is anytime I go on there and find something that's different from the week prior, just go ahead and post it. And you can start doing that to monitor the cards that you're holding on to. So with all that out of the way, I want to go ahead and jump into some viewer questions that were from the Discord. The first one that we have, Rahul, is going to be, what are the current staple cards in terms of commons and uncommons now that Brilliant Stars is out? I know I can find this info anywhere, but I'd like to hear what you have to say. So I guess what he's asking is, what are some of the new cards from Brilliant Stars that you're looking at that might be the next staples? And for anyone that doesn't know, staples are going to be cards that are probably going to have longevity across their life span in rotation.
Let's pull up Poke Collector and look at what's going on here. So in terms of staples, it's a hard thing to say because there are obviously cards that are going to be good for like one format or two formats, and then usually like disappear into oblivion. Cards that I think will make the will last the distance, be good in their lifetime. RCS V Star and RCS V. I think those cards will last their lifetime. I think the B Barrel line, or just B Barrel specifically, the one that has Industrious Incisors, is going to last its lifetime because any card that can draw cards under extraneous circumstances is very good. Like B Barrel can draw cards and fill your hand up to 5, which has always been a good ability in the Pokemon TCG. Will knows that a previous card, Octillery, had that ability, and it was highly sought after and highly played. Manaphy is also going to be one of those cards that I think goes the distance because it is, while there is cards that have bench damage and spread damage, cards like Manaphy have always been very strong with the bench barrier ability that stops bench damage. And cards like Manaphy have been printed in different iterations, Mr. Mime as well as Mew, and both those cards lasted their entire lifetime and were played in decks pretty heavily their entire lifetime. Another really, really big one is Luminion V. While most decks won't play more than one copy of Luminion V, that card is going to be a staple pretty much in every single deck. I know I'm not saying uncommons and commons, I'm just kind of giving you guys a general state of staples. I realized as I was talking. And then when we get down to the trainers, cards like Boss's Orders, Choice Belt, Collapsed Stadium, Cynthia's Ambition, Magma Basin, Gloria, Ultra Ball, Double Turbo Energy are kind of the trainers that fit that bill of like they are going to probably last their entire lifetime. There's a couple of ones in here that are like a little more niche, like Roseanne's Backup is probably one of the most niche cards in here, but I don't ever see more than one ever being played in a deck. So for the cards like those, it's hard to spec on because even if they pop up and blow up, it's not like they're going to be worth a hell of money because, you know, it's one of those cards that it's only a one of. So maybe people aren't going to be like going after it as much. But the other ones I mentioned are like very high counts in all of their decks and their respective decks, and they're going to probably last their entire lifetime because a lot of those cards make a certain archetype viable, or they just become generally very easy to slot into. Like, for example, the Double Turbo Energy can slot into pretty much every like new age deck. Especially in paired with Arceus. And it makes a lot of old cards become more viable, and future cards will also become viable due to this. Same with Choice Belt with the damage.
Right, and I believe Luminion V is very reminiscent of Tapu Lele GX. That was a card that dominated in 2017 when it was releasing Guardians Rising. So a lot of the times, and this is a good indicator as well, you will see cards in the future that are like direct or very similar reprints to cards that have existed in the past. So like Tapu Lele GX was one of the greatest cards in that time era. You could even argue the best card. Luminion V is essentially a reprint of that card, just a different Pokemon. So you know that Luminion V is going to be very good because of how good Tapu Lele was. And this kind of wraps into a strategy that I know Danny Phantom has covered on his channel. When you have this type of knowledge, you can go in Facebook groups or local groups or anything and set a buy list. And you could even offer like 50% of market value because people don't necessarily see these cards as valuable, especially trainers. Like trainers or Pokemon that are worth a couple dollars. You go in there and be like, hey everyone, here's my buy list. I'm buying Drizziles at $1, Capture Energies at $1. You know, do the math there on the respective card. But people that are like, whoa, I have 100 of these Drizziles because I've opened so much Sword and Shield base. They're like, I can get $100 for a bunch of uncommons. Sign me up. And then you go ahead and take that $100 that you've invested in the Drizziles and sell them at $5 each, which I know is not the current price of Drizzile, but the example is there. You can start analyzing these competitive cards and posting them in groups, and the collectors that have opened tons of packs now have that value add because instead of just bulking it to someone, like, whoa, there's someone that wants to buy this uncommon for this much? Okay, sure, I'll go ahead and do that. So there's a lot of ways that you can kind of use that data and analyze it. And then kind of similar to the last question, but more so wrapping into current standard, This person is asking, I'd like to know what are the better playable cards from recent sets in general, and Brilliant Stars we already covered. How do you think the game has changed in its recent years, and where do you think it's heading?
So I think a lot of the trainers have been pretty good across the board in the last couple sets, and I'm very happy to see them. Trainer supporter stadiums like those, that like bulk, that like grip of cards, basically. With Vmaxes, you can kind of tell some of them are going to be hits and some of them are going to just be like bulk, like straight up bulk. Like for example, if you look at Kingler VMAX, you're probably like, that's not gonna cut it. But if you look at cards like Mew VMAX and like Genesect, you see like a very obvious synergy within the Fusion Strike mechanic there. It's kind of like hand wrapped and handed to you in a bow, so it's a very easy one to tell. Cards like Leafeon and Jolteon were a little bit harder to spot, but they're also both very good. Umbreon VMAX will like last the test of time. Unfortunately, evolutions are probably always going to be a little more expensive on the pricey side compared to your other cards because they are evolutions and they're a fan favorite. Um, the game, there's obviously like a grip of more stuff. Just look up some buy lists, kind of figure out like those in depth. Each set has their own set of cards that become really good on release, and some rotate out and some kind of make their way back in based on typing weaknesses. For example, um, like Jolteon is kind of taking a back seat right now because there's a lot of bench healing and whatever. But Jolteon was very good for the last like 2 or 3 sets in its lifetime, and it might come back. Who knows? Like that kind of thing. Cards that were always good won't always just go away. They have a chance to come back in some capacity. Um, and the game was for the last couple of years, like last 2 or 3 years, was in a really rough spot because of how quick the games were going with three prizers, and three prizers haven't completely been eliminated from the format. But with V stars coming back, I do feel like a grip of skill has been introduced or reintroduced to the game, and it feels like there's a lot more sequencing and a lot more. Uh, I don't know. Prize mapping is probably the best word. Just kind of figuring out how do I go from point A to point B and end the game with the remaining resources I have. And I really like stuff like that because that's where skilled players will thrive. And that's where like niche cards will become more and more valuable because the whole game isn't just like an all-out brawl. And if it's an all-out brawl, then you're not going to see as many cute cards pop up, and then your bulk cards might not be as pricey.
Right. Um, and in addition to that, some of the more like trainer cards that are good right now, and that will probably be good for the remainder of their lifetime. The two most obvious ones are anything titled Professor's Research because of the way that card works. It's basically a reprint of the same card with different artwork. Professor's Research is probably the greatest draw engine in the game right now. You discard your hand and you draw 7 cards. I think every deck plays it. Boss's Order is the same kind of thing. It's a very good card. It's called a Gust Effect, where you are playing that card and you are switching one of the bench Pokemon with the active Pokemon. Professor's Research and Boss's Orders are great cards. They've kind of started to get reprinted into Oblivion, so they're not selling for as much, but that's a very obvious card that, oh, okay, I'm paying 3 cents for this. It's probably 25, 30 cents. And the Holo versions, like Boss's Order Holo, I think is still a couple dollars. And then this is going to tie into more of the Limitless TCG, like looking at those deck lists, but Cramomatic, Adventures Discovery, Scoop Up Net, Roadhom Phone. There's tons of singles and like trainers that these decks play, and because of how Pokemon works, you can build your deck around anything as long as you stay in the confines of the rules. So pretty much any trainer could be good at any point. So that list is always going to be changing. And I guess a hot tip for the people that are still here 28 minutes into the video, so thank you for being here. This is something that not many people will realize, but if you're going to try and incorporate an active strategy of paying attention to the TCG in your business, it's extremely important that you not only pay attention to what's becoming good, but what's going to be phasing out. Like Rahul mentioned, Jolteon VMAX has a lot of potential for doing bench damage and winning games by spreading damage counters across the field. Manaphy from Brilliant Stars that he was mentioning has a ability that prevents bench damage to bench Pokemon. So all it takes to increase your winning percentage against a Jolteon VMAX deck is putting Manaphy into your deck, because now the Jolteon VMAX is very hindered in the strategy that it can perform. So you'll see Jolteon VMAX be a $20 card go to $10 because all of a sudden this new card that came out is going to affect the playability of said card. So it's extremely important to watch both sides. Is this card good now? And is it going to be good in the future? Oh, a bunch of scans just came out and this card is going to hinder this card. And that's definitely more on the complex side of analyzing the card game, but it's extremely important if you're going to be speculating on, especially those ultra rares where you're investing a lot more money into those cards. And then going into the last couple questions, how popular is the competitive scene at the moment, and is there still a large casual fan base in the TCG in general?
Um, I think the competitive side is a lot smaller than people think, and that's something that I think is actively trying to change with how much exposure we're giving it. While we're small, we do have like a big say in, I guess, like the competitive side of things and like in general what you guys see. And we are like a very strong like force, but I think we make up like less than probably like 4 or 5% of the entire casual like total community, which is like a shocking number. I know there's a lot of people who casually collect, a lot of people who casually play, or like not even play, but just casually just like look at the cards or like to have their favorite cards. But less than 5% of those people take the time to learn. With PTCG Live coming out soon, we're currently in the soft beta launch um, for mobile clients as well as the computer and other stuff. Just having that availability to teach people the game. The tutorial has been very good. The new tutorial is very good. I've already played through the beta, so I can tell you guys firsthand the beta is very good. The tutorial is very good, and you guys will get some very competitive cards off the bat with the you get 9 free decks that are all very competitively viable, which is crazy to me, because that was never available to us when we first started. So it does look like Pokemon has an interest in growing their competitive side, and I would love to see more people join, but we are very small. We're a very small majority. I do think more people will come over since the boom happened about a year and a half ago, like 2 years ago. But I don't think our numbers will ever exceed past like that 1,500, 2,000 like regional mark ever, or not ever, I say, but like for a good while.
Right, right. And it is insane how small of a percentage of the Pokemon community competitive is, and the effects that it has on prices. Because despite being so small, it does cause big swings in card prices, and it's very cool. This is reminiscent of stuff that you would see in Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh in their competitive tournament structures. The Pokemon is the same way. It has a tournament structure all the way from small events to the World Championship events, and players like Rahul go to these events and play to win. So they directly influence cards. People that build decks influence decks. It's a continuous cycle, and the season lasts pretty much all year round. So you consistently have the buying and selling and trading of cards at regional levels, local levels, high levels, business levels. It's insane. The competitive market as a whole is wild, and it's definitely not an easy task to learn all of it. Rahul and I have years of experience behind us from playing the game, where it kind of translates into the how do I speculate on this thing, whatever. So a card like Ultra Ball to us is a card that we've been playing with for years. So when we see Ultra Ball comes out, we know that that card's going to be good in the future just because of our experience with the game. So take it that as you will. Like Rahul mentioned, PTCG Live is coming out, and that's going to be a great way for new players to get into the game. So if you want to learn the game yourself, try and develop some of the skills that we're talking about when recognizing good cards, I would highly recommend you look into installing Pokemon Trading Card Game Live when that becomes available. So
Yep.
do as you wish with that. And with that being
Sure, I'm
said,
sure we'll make like a video as well for you guys, like maybe just like how to get the best value out of your code cards and stuff like that. Probably a great idea for Will to kind of teach you guys how to make use of these stacks of code cards you're probably just like sitting around with if you're not going to sell them.
right. And with that being said, we're going to go ahead and conclude the video here. So Rahul, thank you so much for coming on. Go ahead and shout out anything that you'd like to do. And also to the audience, I know this is a much longer video, 33 minutes. I can go ahead and start breaking down some of the stuff that we've discussed into smaller videos. We can also try and do another podcast with Rahul or another person. So anything, if you're still here, first of all, thank you so much. But anything that you want to see broken down into smaller bits, or maybe a second segment going into more of the nitty gritty of the competitive world, go ahead and leave in the comments. Let me know, or email me, thelabtcg@gmail.com. You know what to do. Rahul, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you for having me, Will. As always, it was a lot of fun. I love talking about this kind of stuff. If you guys want to catch more of my content, my YouTube is just my name, Rahul Reddy. I will be posting a lot of competitive stuff, buy list videos, how to prep for regionals. And when I talk about those, how to prep for regionals, you guys want to keep a close ear to the ground about what cards I say are potential sleepers for this weekend, or potential like threats. Kind of like a just telling you guys what's going to happen here or there. And then my Twitter is probably the other best place to find me, the Flea, TheFleeee, 4 E's. You guys can find me there on Twitter, and that's basically all you need to find me at. I think everything else is pretty irrelevant. But again, always thank you, Will, for having me.
No problem. And like I said, Rahul is an invaluable resource for this side of the hobby, as well as some of those other names that I mentioned, and we'll go ahead and talk about that in more in depth in other videos. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you're still here 34 minutes and you're a real one, like, comment, subscribe, you know what to do. Join the Discord if you want to get some active talking going. Thanks so much, and I'll catch you all in the next video. See you guys.